Jamie Stuckless. Jamie, hello, good afternoon.
Hi there, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please let me know when you're ready to go and I'll begin your 5-minute timer.
Okay, thank you, I'm ready.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie. I live in Ward 1, and I'm presenting to you today as a resident. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you and discuss the 2021 municipal budget. I'd like to start by voicing my support for the recommendations outlined by the JustRecoveryHamilton Coalition. I'm grateful to live in a place with such compassionate and thoughtful community leaders, and I hope that council and city staff will seek to work with the coalition and engage with community members to implement their urgent recommendations. While it's hard to choose just one thing to focus on from the over 150 recommendations that the coalition has put forward, I know that my time today is limited, so I would like to strongly urge council to invest in providing winter maintenance of all of our sidewalks. We may not get as much snow as cities like Montreal or Ottawa, who commit to clearing thousands of kilometers of their sidewalks each winter. But we do get enough snow here in Hamilton for it to be a real mobility barrier for thousands of people in our community. Moving here a few years ago from snowy Ottawa, I was especially surprised at how snow and ice is allowed to accumulate for days and sometimes weeks at a time on uncleared properties and in piles blocking crosswalk curb cuts, making them not only impassable, but also very hard for anyone to clear away. Universal maintenance of our sidewalks in the winter seems to fit into the priorities that have been outlined for this term of council, including addressing climate change, increasing multimodal transportation, and prioritizing equity, diversity, and inclusion. It also would address several priorities outlined by the Just Recovery Hamilton Coalition, including investing in women, mobility justice, and disability justice. Through delegations last year, op-eds, and online surveys, Council has heard that this is a priority if we want to create an equitable and accessible city, and we need to act on this as soon as possible. I understand that any decision about winter sidewalk maintenance has been deferred to these 2021 budget deliberations, and I hope that the city will move forward and ensure that it is part of the winter program this year. On a similar note, I'd like to echo calls by the coalition and several other speakers here today for a greater investment in mobility through a connected cycling network that serves people of all ages and abilities, as well as city support for the ongoing operations of our incredible bike share system. Secondly, I would like to support the forthcoming motion to reallocate Hamilton Police Services surplus back into the community. I strongly support this and would like to see those funds reallocated to housing and community-led harm reduction supports. I am frustrated to see the continued overfunding of the police while much needed community services and organizations are underfunded, especially as we deal with the pandemic and its disproportionate effects on communities that have been made vulnerable. I'd ask Council to vote against the proposed budget increase for the Hamilton Police and vote in support of the motion to reallocate any police budget surplus to the community. Lastly, let me close my delegation by asking Council to review and update the community engagement process around the annual budget. We have only this one day where community members can make delegations to Council. Personally, Budget Day is a very intimidating and time-consuming process to participate in. It has been so inspiring to listen to fellow delegates here today, but I am sure that participating in this process may not be realistic for everyone in the community. I'd urge Council to follow the precedent that has been set in other municipalities like Cambridge, Peterborough, Ottawa, Waterloo, London, and others, and provide multiple avenues for public engagement on the budget. These budget engagements could also occur as early as the spring or summer, providing residents with information about the budget and its impacts, and allowing feedback to be incorporated from the community earlier in the budget drafting process. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you today and share my thoughts. I appreciate any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I'm looking to members of council to see if there are any questions. I'm going to ask Councillor Clark if he could take the chair because I have two questions of you.
Please proceed, Councillor.
Thank you. So, Jamie, it is with respect to the overlay of equity and mobility again, a theme which I know you're passionate about. You're specifically focusing on sidewalks, and I think you identify as a female. I was wondering if you would share some thoughts on that relationship, please.
Jamie?
Thank you for the question. And yes, there definitely is a relationship between, the mobility options that we provide and the mobility options that we prioritize, and equity, and particularly gender equity in the city. And I was really inspired a couple of years ago by a study that came out of Sweden that actually found when they decided to apply a gender lens to their public works budget, they found that if they really wanted to be prioritizing the mobility of women, they had to start plowing sidewalks first, because they found that it was more typical that people who identify as women were making walking trips, walking to school, walking to work, walking around their community. And by prioritizing the clearing of roads for motor vehicles, they were prioritizing the movement of men over the prioritization of movement of women. So, that was one thing that really got me interested in the idea that, it's not simply about, walking somewhere and creating that safe space. It's also about making sure that all people in our community have access to the transportation needs that they need. And obviously there's also, a disability justice lens to clearing sidewalks as well, for people with mobility devices to be able to get over curb cuts and not have to get over snowbanks or walk in the middle of the street. And, really anybody who's pushing a stroller or pulling a grocery cart or walking a dog or a small child, the snow and slush and ice can create a real mobility barrier as well as a safety concern. And so there are lots of different elements that are important to consider when we decide whether or not we want to plow our sidewalks in the winter.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. I have one question with respect to your comment about the budgeting process per se and community participation. I love the fact that you acknowledge that it can be an intimidating experience, and having to wait and use all your day. I just wanted to give you an opportunity, because you've referenced, which is always handy for me, I wrote it down, Cambridge, Peterborough, Ottawa. I don't know if you'd like to take this moment to focus on one of those. Exactly what do they do that you found to be of value? Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Jamie?
Great, thank you for the question. It was actually this time last year when the budget process was happening, and I was going back and forth on Toronto on the GO train, and had some extra time in the mornings with my phone while sitting on the train, that I decided to research what other municipalities did around their budget delegations. And since you've asked for one example, maybe I'll focus in on the information I found from the city of Peterborough. Just looking at their website and social media accounts, it looks like they start their budget engagement processes as early as April. And, they host an online survey, but they also work to host a series of budget open houses. And, I haven't personally participated in one of those events in Peterborough, so I can't speak to them specifically, but from reading their documentation and the website, it looks like those open houses are hosted in partnership with councillors and with staff, and just kind of, a months-long process of informing residents and hearing from residents in a way that can be incorporated at the outset of the budget drafting process, and not simply at the end when it may feel a bit more overwhelming to make those changes to a document that's already largely been prepared.
Councillor?
Thank you. Those are my questions. I'll take back the chair. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Jamie, for sharing your insights with us and that experience. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.